Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode and very special episode of the None of Your Business podcast. As you can see, I have jettisoned off Lacey, and we have a very special, we could even call you today co host because you're in the co host seat.
I love it.
We've never had a guest be in the studio with us in that seat, especially not this studio. I don't know if we've ever done one in the other studio with a guest. Have we done? We interviewed the Arbuckles there. So yes, we've done the other studio with the guests, but we have with us super special guests, and I'm super excited to dive into a lot of your concepts, your philosophies on life and business that are going to be super useful for all of you. So you're going to absolutely love this. We have with us today Chance Welton, and his whole thing, your sort of theme, your catchphrase is abundance. Like you're just about abundance, which is probably one of our favorite topics here on the None of Your Business podcast. We love talking about abundance. I'm actually sad that Lacey's not here because that's one of her things, mostly because Lacey has had to do a lot of work on framing her mind to accept abundance. And there's so many little things, right, that we do,
Absolutely.
like expectations, like, oh, I want to make, I don't know, $5 million. But then what happens is we don't even realize how limiting that is and that we're not actually open. And one of Lacey's big things right now is I'm open to overflow. I'm open to even more than what I think is possible. So I'm super excited to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, my friend. We got to meet at the Billy Joel Stevie Nicks concert at that beautiful suite that Meltzer put together at the stadium. It was awesome, and we had a great conversation there. And yeah, now we're out here for VCon, and it timed up just right. So I'm excited
Timed
to
out
be here.
perfectly. Timed out. And you said, oh, you came all the way out here. I think most people don't know how far out we live, not necessarily on a farm, but not close to Indianapolis by any means. So we appreciate you making the drive.
I love it. I live in the country too. I live up in the mountains. Like I'm away from the cities, so I get what you're getting at.
You're down with that,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And golf, I found out.
Oh
I
yeah,
just
avid
recently
golfer.
found out about your passion for golf. So sometime soon we'll have to get out and
Absolutely.
we'll play some golf together. We always start every podcast off with this exact same question because when you interview somebody and you understand this from your experience, and you're around a lot of very powerful and known people. And so when people are known, so people are like, oh, cool, it's Chance. I watch him on Instagram. I'm plugged in with him. It's easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking because we don't know your past. That, oh yeah, he's super successful. But then that's probably because, and then we have every one of us has like, oh, because he was born into it,
Yep.
or he had his brother helped him, or something happened along the way. Tell us a little bit about your creation story and how you end up being here, not just here, but here in life, surrounded by success and surrounded by so many successful people.
Absolutely. So I grew up on a farm in Idaho, and my dad taught us work ethic at a very young age. We would go out and feed the animals before we go to school. He's like, "Oh, we want a pig. Well, do you know how a pig like needs to live?" And we're like, "Yeah, you just buy a pig and he figures it out." He's like, "Now he needs water. He needs food. You know how much food he's gonna eat?" Like, we have no idea. We just want a pig, because we saw Charlotte's Web and they have that pig in there, like,
Yeah.
we want a cool pig, right? So, he taught us responsibility at a very young age, like, if you want that, great, but, like, these are the things that go along with it, and I feel like you learn a lot of those core principles and understanding is, like, really how the world works and where food comes from, when you live out in the country. I think it was a really important foundation for me to build off of, and, my grandfather the same way, worked really hard, had a farm, and then my dad started his farm. Is out in Marsing, Idaho, near the Snake River, and, yeah, it was and then we wanted a pony, so we got a pony and started riding a pony, and it was just, like, a really fun upbringing, and I remember after school, I'd help my dad with, like, irrigating and working and stuff, and I said, "So, how much am I getting paid?" He said, "Well, you had breakfast this morning, didn't you? Slept in a warm bed last night, didn't you? You got shoes on your feet, don't you? You gotta ride to school tomorrow, don't you?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Okay, I think we can call it even." So, but he said, "Once get into your teens, then I'll start paying you." So I remember at 13, literally to the date I was waiting for it, I was like, "Hey, this is when I start getting rich, right?" And, I'm thinking, "Oh, maybe like 10, $20 an hour." I was like, "No, I started at $5 an hour." And so we'd be picking rocks out of fields because we're out in in the desert in Idaho, and a lot of that farmland, hadn't really been farmed before. And so we were literally picking rocks out of the ground and then, filling up the back of a truck, and that was, like, really my first job that I remember so vividly of like, "Wow, this is work.
Hmm.
This is a lot of work." And so that's how we grew up, and, you know, eventually I was like, "Man, there's gotta be something else out there." My dad's like, "Do you want me to hand off the farm to you?" And I was like, "Absolutely not."
Where's the farm today? Is it still in the family?
No, so he slowly downsized, so we owned about 100 acres, and then we leased about another 4 or 500 acres.
Mm.
So it was a big operation. We had 4 or 5 other, farm hands that were working with us, and, yeah, that's not what I wanted to do, but I learned a lot of responsibility around that, and, my dad taught us to drive at a very young age, how to operate machinery and dirt bikes, and, it just but then if you wanted those things, you gotta take care of them, right? So, went to high school, played sports, and then, eventually it was like, I just want to get a job in the city. Like, I just want to get away from the farm. So I started, bussing tables, working, line cook, that sort of thing.
Where's the city?
The city at the time was Boise,
Boise.
which
That
now
was
is a
like,
now is a city. Back then was still kind of
but when you were on the farm, like that was like the dream.
oh,
We get to
if
Boise.
you made it to Boise, you got to the other side of the river, like you were coming up.
Okay.
You were coming up. Getting a car and, like, being able to get on the freeway, like, that was a big deal, so after school, I would drive into Boise and bus tables, and, I remember, like, busting tables in a night, you can make, like, 150 bucks, and I was like,
Beats
"This."
picking
Yeah,
rocks.
it beats picking rocks for 40 bucks for a whole day's worth of work, and so it was, like, kinda that next level of, like, wow, I'm seeing more abundance, and so I was working less hours and making more money, and then that kinda started to click into my head, I was like, "How do I get smarter about generating income?" And, everyone in high school is, pressuring you. Are you going into the military? Are you going into college? Are you going into a trade school? Everybody comes and sets up at lunch, like, hey, come to like the auto tech trade school or the HVAC trade school. And I was like, none of this really is like resonating with me. And I was like, you know what? I don't actually know what I want to do. So I'm just going to just kind of cruise and just see what happens. So I kept working in Boise for a while. And then a good friend of mine that we were working with said, we were talking about doing this big world travel, and we had this big map in our basement. I was living with 4 of my best friends at the time, and we had all these pins all over the world of where we wanted to go. And my friend at the time, Adam, was actually obsessed with Lord of the Rings, so, like, New Zealand was, like, the mecca. I was like, "That's where we gotta get to."
Nice.
So we gotta figure out how to get to New Zealand, but we're like, instead of just flying straight to New Zealand, let's, like, plan out this whole trip. So, like, for a year, we're trying to plan out this whole trip, and we're with this guy, Bodie, and said, "Hey, we're gonna go travel the world." He said, "Before you guys do anything, just move to Maui, live there for a year. You'll meet the right people, and you'll have friends along the way that will be able to kind of help you along because it's such a transient place." And we're like, "Okay, I'll go live in Hawaii." So at 19, I bought a one way ticket. I had about $300 to my name. Didn't have any work lined up. Didn't have a house lined up. Didn't have a car lined up. And we just went around just like living on the beach and sleeping on the beach. And eventually we met some people. We started doing some odd end jobs with them because they were construction guys. Met this other kid and he let me like live in his backyard in a tent. And it rains a lot in Hawaii. I'm thinking like, oh, I'll just be in my sunny little tent. It'll be great. And it's like this, just getting poured on. Went from homeless on the beach to essentially still homeless in
Homeless in
some
someone's
guys. Yeah,
backyard.
yeah, yeah. But I was like, I'm still coming up. Like, I'm not afraid I'm gonna get robbed in the middle of the night, right? And Hawaii is relatively a safe place, but it's also kind of a dangerous place that people don't really realize. So when we just kept telling people, "Oh, we're just gonna live on the beach here," all over the place, like, that's not the greatest idea. It's not the greatest idea. So, got a job, working at a restaurant and, like, washing I know I was washing dishes. I still have a photo of me where the dishes are stacked so high, I can't even see out of my thing. I'm like, "I'm never getting out of here," right?
Is it like a nice restaurant?
It was a Ruth's Chris
Oh,
Steakhouse,
Ruth's Chris. Okay.
which every person that sits down uses, like, 18
Yeah.
dishes,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
not just 1 dinner plate, and so, I remember just being like, "Wow, I gotta figure something out," and one night, I overheard the bartender outside smoking a cigarette, how much money he made. Said he made, like, $500 in one night, and I was just like, "That's the next level of abundance. Like, I got to get to there. So,
Are the 3 other guys still with you?
my well, here's a funny story. So my best friend at the time, we moved out there together, and we were posting all these photos of us at waterfalls, and because back then MySpace was still a thing, so we're posting all these videos, and all of a sudden, our friends just start showing up in Hawaii. So it started out with 2 kids from Idaho, and then eventually we got a big house in the jungle, and there was 13 of us,
All from Idaho.
all from Idaho, and, everyone call it like all of our friends in town call it like your own private Idaho because we had like this Idaho compound,
That's
and
awesome.
people are living out of vans, and we built a tree fort, and there's like 3 guys living in the tree fort, and it became like this Idaho, like, hippie compound. And we're like, "We've made it." Like, now we have a car. We bought a car for $300. It's an Acura Legend, and we called it the Legend because we'd fit 8 people in there with 6 surfboards and, like, just drove the crap out of it, and it just kept running for, like, 2 years. I'm like, "I don't understand how that." We didn't even put oil in it. We could barely afford to put gas in it, and it just kept going, so it became the Legend. Eventually, we saved up enough money, and we're like, "Okay, we've been here for a while. We've met people from all over the world." It was, like, such an amazing experience because we were literally just dropped in paradise and, like, figured out. So we learned about organic food and yoga and meditation and all these things that I was just, like, never exposed to. And I just got really excited about life because I was like, "Wow, all these people are, they seem free. Like, they're coming and going, and they're living on the island, and they're traveling the world." I'm like, "This is what I wanna do." And so that was just, like, that next step of, "Well, I'm just gonna travel. Like, that's all I'm gonna do."
You never lost that. You never lost that that was the goal.
Exactly.
And did you get the job as a bartender at Ruth's Chris?
Well, that'll come back in
Okay.
a bit.
Okay.
So, we ended up saving money. I didn't get a bartending job on the island, but we're doing some catering and some other things. And we saved up enough money to where we're like, okay, we're gonna buy our around the world trip ticket. So we talked to a travel agency, and we ended up buying like I want to say 18 flights for like $2,500.
What?
Like, cause it was all these different weird connections, and he's like, "Well, if you guys don't mind spending, like, a week in Fiji, there's, like, a layover to where then once you get to New Zealand, it'll be, like, a cheaper flight." So we're like, "Yeah, we'll spend a week in Fiji, like, cool." So he planned the whole thing out, and we're like, "Okay, all we know is, like, once we get to those countries, we just gotta
Gotta
figure
figure it
out
out.
money and then just make sure that we stay alive to that next date to get us to the next country." So that's what we did. We went to Fiji, spent time there, met a lot of amazing people. Went to New Zealand, worked at this, lodge, and it's right at Mount Doom, so everybody comes there from that are like Lord of the Rings people and want to do that hike. So we were meeting people from like everywhere because people in Europe would start traveling, around the world that way, and we were coming the other way. So we were meeting all these kids in gap year, like at the end of their travel. So then they're going back to Australia, they're going back to Indonesia, they're going back to the UK, and
Now you
so
got friends.
now we got friends, and I'm writing it down in my notepad of, like, their name and their email, and, like, I don't have a computer or a phone. I'm like, "I don't know how I'm gonna email them, but I got their contact information, right?" And then, about halfway through the trip, everyone's like, "No, no one uses MySpace anymore, everyone uses Facebook." So we got Facebook, and that was literally, like, our networking tool. We were doing that and couch surfing. So couch surfing was a network back then. I think it still might be around. But it was like a social media platform, but if someone had a spare bedroom or a spare couch, like, you could just go and stay for free. So we're kinda leveraging that, the friends that we had met, getting dead end jobs, working wherever we could. We were painting houses, we were, guiding on this at this lodge and just kinda piecing it together. Went to Australia, worked on an organic farm. It was completely off the grid, and just for meeting the most amazing people that, like, found their own little niche in life about how to just kinda do what they wanted. Some were well off, some weren't, but just were a lot of people that we're running into, like, weren't really working a job or had, like, a traditional, you know, um, like, dream job, right? And so, as we kept traveling, I kept meeting these people, and I remember we were in Bali, and this guy was working on his laptop on the beach with a beer, like, just in his swim shorts, and I saw him working there for a while, and I, like, kinda look over at his screen, and he's like, he's not on social media, he's just, like he was, like, on eBay. I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "This is my job, like, I flip stuff on eBay." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I buy stuff cheap, and then I sell it for a little bit more, and I've lived in, Bali for the last, like, 8 months, and this is, like, my job." And it, like my mind exploded. 'Cause I was like,
You
I got
remember what your job was at that time?
So in Bali, actually, the girlfriend that I had at the time came and visited me, and she saved up a bunch of money because she knew I'd be broke. So I was living like a king
You
in
didn't have to
Bali. Yeah.
okay, and but then you meet this guy, you're like, "Hey, I'm living like a king," but this guy, he's making a living with his feet in the sand
Yeah.
and left.
And he doesn't have to go home. Like, I have a
Had to go
short window, you know what I mean? And so that had really stuck in my head of like, okay, there people are making money on the internet. Interesting, because I'd never experienced that before. Like no one was talking about that in our town. And so, yeah, we kept traveling around the world. I went to like 12 different countries that year. By the time we finished, I came all the way back around uh, to the backside. So I left Maui and came all the way back around. So I did a full loop around the globe that year in about 11 months. Changed my entire life. Was just so passionate about life. Just wanted to keep traveling. Wanted to keep networking. Like really learned how to communicate with anybody, which I think is a super valuable skill. People want to start as an entrepreneur. It's like you got to learn how to communicate before you can even go down that road, right? It's like you got to know how to find buyers, you got to know how to find strategic partnerships, you got to know how to negotiate deals. Like that's the most important skill of being an entrepreneur. And I could just connect with anybody wherever we're at, whether we were in Nepal and could barely, connect with someone. Like the little bit of Nepalese that I learned, I was able to build relationships and
Wow.
families would invite us in to have dinner with them. And, we're sitting on the floor in the dirt and like whatever they have, they're like sharing with us. And, it was just really, really magical and really opened my eyes to the possibilities, and I knew that I wanted to be a digital nomad. I wanted to be nomadic and be wherever I wanted to be in the world with whoever I wanted to be and not ever have to be anywhere. Like, that was always my biggest fear is being locked into my hometown or some city that I didn't even wanna be in because of a job. So I thought, "I don't know exactly what it is, but I just know that what I don't want." And I think that's really important for people to understand. It's like if you don't know what you want, like start canceling out the things that you know that you don't want, and that's just going to keep moving you closer to the needle, right?
Mhm.
So we get back to Maui, end up starting a clothing company with my girlfriend at the time, and grew that quite a bit. Had no idea what we were doing, but we outgrew Hawaii, so we needed to move to California. And so we moved to California, and I'm just seeing like so many different people being very successful in a lot of different ways.
The
People.
clothing company, are you selling online? So
Yes.
this kind of is that your introduction from Bali? Hey, this can be done. Clothing company.
Yeah.
Wow, we can expand our prospect pool if we offer this over the internet.
Exactly. And so I remember that guy flipping stuff. I'm like, well, we can get these shirts produced at this price. Now we can sell them for that price. And so at the time, we were selling them a lot of like the pop up shops, like at the markets and stuff in Hawaii. And then eventually got a couple shops to carry them. And then a couple shops in Santa Monica wanted to carry them. And then, yeah, we just kind of outgrew. We're like, we need to go closer where production is. So we ended up moving to Topanga Canyon because I was like, I'm not gonna move to LA. I was like, I can do Topanga Canyon and still have like my hippie vibes going, like coming from Maui straight to like the belly of the beast. I'm like, I don't think my nervous system can handle that. so, so we get there, and I mean, I'm just like, just soaking up all the information that I can. I'm just like such a student of life where anybody that was doing anything interesting, I just wanted to sit with them and learn from them and do whatever I could to kind of get closer to my thing. So we had that going. I was doing a little bit of modeling because we were kind of connected in that world. And they're like, oh, we need a long haired dude to model this hippie clothing. Anyways, then my hair was like down to here and was doing that and then had some old motorcycles at the time. Then I started renting out to photo shoots. Then I found other friends that had old cars and then was kind of running my own little like rental thing. And I thought, well, this is really cool. Like I don't even have to be there and they're delivering the car and I'm making money. So I'm like, I'm starting to get closer and closer to this, like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm making money without actually having to be there thing. Not quite connecting it fully to what it's become today, but it was just kind of that next step further. And I was going to massage school at the time, got that, started my own business with that, and which is doing really well, but I was just like getting burnt out. And I saw massage entities popping up all over the place. I'm like, how are these guys just popping up everywhere and people are lining up to go in there? And I was like, I didn't even understand what marketing was. And I was like, man, I got to figure this thing out. And so I remember I got on Yelp at the time, and the one guy that was kind of like owning Yelp in Topanga Canyon like retired. So I had a couple of reviews, and all of a sudden everyone started calling me through the internet on Yelp. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of cool.
for massage.
Yeah.
How did you get all the people originally? You said it was going pretty well, but you didn't really understand marketing, just skill and word of mouth?
I was working at Equinox, and then I would take my high profile clients out of Equinox and, um, and then, like, do house visits.
Got
And then I wanna but I was driving all over LA, and it was just, like, it was so much.
it.
It was just, like, you know how LA traffic
Yes.
is, it's insane. I didn't even know traffic existed like that. I come from an old country road,
Right.
you know?
I can imagine.
And, so the Yelp thing started to work, and then I was just going down all these rabbit holes on the internet. I bought this used Apple laptop from some guy on Craigslist for, I wanna say, like, 400 bucks, and I was like, "I gotta figure out what this thing is." So I started going down all these rabbit holes, and I ended up reading this long blog that was talking about renting, like, how to rank sites, like SEO, and I thought, "Oh, this is really cool. I could do this for my business." Ended up joining a mentorship, and they were teaching how to, like, rank and rent, like, map listings. So they would rank these map listings and then rent out those phone numbers to business owners. So all the leads that were coming in organically, it's like, pay me 800 bucks a month for a little, phone number that I was essentially ranking on Google My Business, which back then you could rank a map listing in like a week, 2 weeks. Like, people had no idea how to really do it. So I became obsessed with that. And I thought, I can start doing this for other businesses. So I just went all in. And at the time I want to say I had like $1,000 to my name. But let me back up a little bit, because we are talking about, oh, did you have the resources? Did you have somebody help you out? My father took his own life in 2010, and he didn't have really a whole lot to leave us, but he had a health insurance, or he had a life insurance. Wasn't a ton of money. It was like 100 grand, but we got that, and I didn't understand how money worked. I didn't understand how to invest it. And within a year, that money was completely gone, and I had nothing to show for it. I was down to my last $500, and I invested that with this group to understand lead gen. I knew that our fridge was full of food. I knew that my truck was full of gas. It could last me 30 days. I knew rent. We had about 3 weeks, so we had to pay rent again. I didn't tell my girlfriend at the time because I know she would have killed me. And I paid for it. And so I thought, I got 3 weeks to figure this out. And I can't go to family because they know that I just got money not too long ago. And, people talk about, if I had money, I could be successful. No, you don't need the resources. You need to be resourceful. And I wasn't resourceful. I was like letting it kind of go all over the place and making dumb little investments, and it was gone like that. And I thought, whoa, because at that age, like, 100 grand, I'm rich. That's so much money. And it's not like, it's not at all. It went so quick.
Well, I don't wanna derail your story, but there's this whole process up to this point, you've literally just lived on the edge,
Yes.
right? Like, the water's, like, right here,
The whole
right? You're
time.
about to go under,
The
right,
whole
the whole
time.
time. And I think anybody, I mean, me sitting here, like, this whole thing, it makes me nervous, right? Like, "Oh, it's gonna," look, where there's a point where this, like, all just radically falls apart. Now we then jump to, I'm in the crack house, and I'm like, "How did this happen?" Because we're, like, right on this edge. Where up to this point in your story are you able to find, like, you're just like, "Well, here," I mean, the way you say it, "Well, the fridge is full, the gas tank's full. I mean, we got 30 days to figure it out." Where are you finding this calmness in the midst of what for most people would be absolutely nerve-wracking, to the point that they wouldn't even be able to figure out the next thing to do? You get consumed with, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm in trouble. I'm sinking." You're going to countries, you don't even have a job. You don't have a place to stay. And watching your body language and your tone of voice, you're very calm about this. Like, I'm sure you're just like, "Well, we're gonna go there," which also, by the way, is a very Hawaiian culture kind of thing, right? Like, just that aloha spirit, it's all gonna be okay. But you're not actually Hawaiian, you just live there. So,
Right.
where are you getting that calmness in your spirit?
You know, I realized, building up and getting work ethic and knowing that, like, if I could always kind of figure it out because I was willing to do whatever it took. I had that in me, and I knew I was a good person. I wouldn't do anybody wrong. And I remember in Hawaii, actually, there's 2 times where I got jumped, and these guys, like, literally beat the crap out of me just for being a haole. And I was like, well, I'm not made of glass. These are, like, big guys were beating the crap out of me in this alley. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not made of glass, like, I think I'm stronger and more able to get things done than I ever thought was possible."
Okay, even that's weird though, right? Like, you understand that, right? Like, most people would be jumped in an alley and then immediately go into victim, right? The world is out to get me. My luck. This always happens to me right when I'm about to get my big breakthrough. Something bad happens to me. So again, you have you. How are you? Is it just divine connection where you are learning the lessons that life is bringing you? Or can you trace it back to like why are you so calm in the face of all of this adversity?
My girlfriend at the time told me I needed to start reading books, and I thought, "Why would I read books if I'm surfing?" And she said, "You just you have," she's like, you have this energy where you attract a lot of amazing people in your life, and you already kinda have, like, this universal knowledge that I don't even think that you're aware of. You should read some books to kinda put, like, some backing behind that." So I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and The Law of Attraction, and both those books were just like, the now is all you have, positive thinking all the time, everything that's coming at you is happening for you, not to you, and that was the message I got in the beginning. So I was like, all this is, even though it's crazy, and I kinda, like, would thrive in chaos, as you can tell at this point. um, it would just kinda reaffirm a thing of like, no, the world is a good place. Like the universe is a good place. Like there are amazing people out there. And I was experiencing this through travel. So I always thought that, oh, like I would always have my best friend's back. I would always have a stranger's back. Like I just would think someone would do the same for me. And I just always had that really positive mentality that kind of let me go through those situations and just always be like extremely optimistic.
I wanna this will obviously I'll just let everybody know if you're on your treadmill, this will be one of our longer episodes. Um, so just plan for that. But I wanna dive into this because people accuse me, I agree, thriving in chaos. And people have accused me, I don't agree to this, but people have accused me of creating chaos in a situation so that I can thrive. Like I do my best work when everybody else loses their mind, when everybody else thinks that we cannot win, when everybody else is throwing in the towel, I thrive in that situation. You just said literally the same thing. Thrive in chaos. What do you think about that? Do you to make that assessment of yourself, is there a degree of self-realization that, hey, because I don't think anybody, I mean, I myself, I don't want chaos. I'm not like, I don't wake up and say, like, I hope today's chaotic. Like, I
Right.
don't want that. But is there any degree of self-realization that, like, hey, maybe on this journey, I have intentionally, with some degree of conscious or subconscious intention, set a table for it to be chaos so that I could learn these lessons, so that I could learn that I'm not made out of glass, so that I could learn resourcefulness, so I could learn to read books, to glean knowledge from other people's wisdom and experience. And is that a byproduct of the chaos that you may have created in your own life?
I mean, I'm sure there's definitely some truth to it. I mean, I created a lot of chaos. I mean, I went through a lot of near death experiences for sure.
Out there surfing or even more extreme?
I mean, and avalanches and backcountry skiing, and I mean, you name it. I what was that book? Into the Wild,
Mm,
where he literally, this young kid, like takes off and essentially does what we do, but he like burns all of his money, cuts up his IDs, and he's like, I trust in people and humanity, and just goes on this crazy journey of like hitchhiking around the country and meeting amazing people. And he's like, if you, what was it saying? He's talked about like, if you have nothing, then you have everything to give.
mm,
And I thought, well, that's pretty profound. And so I was kind of exploring that concept of, man, and if I don't have anything, I got to be really out there and I got to really be connecting with people to make sure that like I'm going to get fed, I'm going to have a house to sleep in, I'm going to have these things. Is I wanted to put myself in these extreme situations to kind of just see how I would handle it. So yes, to your
right, to
point,
learn the lessons.
there definitely was some of that, and that book really inspired me to like just keep exploring that, because that's the thing, like, when it talks about stress and anxiety, it's like when you have a big obstacle come up in business or in your life, it's like the first time it's kinda scary, but then you overcome it, and then the next time it happens, you're just kinda like, whatever, you're getting a lot better at putting out fires,
You've
and
already been punched in the
yeah,
face. You know you're not made of
yes.
glass.
You
Yes.
you don't let it consume you anymore, right? Because when we're sitting there and thinking about it and in this fear state, then it's actually the anxiety and the fear of the outcome that stops us from getting through it rather than the actual situation. So I agree, yes. Part of it was the chaos that I created, and the other part of it was, it's a wild world. It's a wild
It
world.
is a wild world. Okay, so we're in, you're in the massage business.
Yeah,
You start to learn this idea about rankings,
yeah.
SEO, ranking for Google My Business. Then how do we jump out of trading time for money inside or at a client's home doing massage?
So a few of my clients were like extremely wealthy. I remember being in this giant house in Malibu. It was probably a 20-30 million dollar property. Great clients, really good friends. They were always like very encouraging about all my entrepreneurial endeavors that I was doing, and I'd kind of bounce ideas off of them. And I'm just got done with working on the wife, and her husband drives in this brand new Ferrari and parks it in the thing, and he comes there, honey, come down and see the Ferrari. And we go in there. I'd never been that close to a Ferrari before, and I sit inside of it, and I was just like, holy smokes, this is a nice car. And then I was like, okay, what do you guys actually do? And he's like, well, I have one of the largest carpet manufacturers in the country. He's out of the Midwest, and yeah, just made millions and millions and millions of dollars in the 80s and the 90s. And he's in this beautiful home in Malibu, and all this stuff's happening. And so it's kind of like the same reoccurring theme kept showing up, and I was like, "Okay." And there's so much money in LA. At first, I was intimidated by it, but then I was really inspired by it and saw people really doing amazing things and building big companies and, like, living a great life and having that perfect balance. And I was like, "Man, I" that was just that next thing of that reinsurance of like, "No, you're meant for something bigger. You're meant for something bigger." Because I was like, "Man, you put me to any task, any challenge, I'm gonna figure it out." So I thought if I start doing that for my own business, like, what could happen? So I start kind of figuring out the rank and rent thing. And at the time, I had another client in Laguna Beach, had this beautiful house right on the water. And they were still my clients. I'd go down there and I asked him, oh, what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm at the, top of a big network marketing company, and I make 80 grand a month, whether I work or not. And I was just like, what? This is crazy. Like, but I kept getting kind of the same message. And I was like, well, how do I do that? He's like, you just need to find an amazing product where you can help a lot of people and it'll continue to add value to their lives without you being there. I was like, okay, I'm getting closer. And so I'm figuring out the rank and rent thing. And I'm like, okay, now I'm getting to where I only got about 2 weeks left, and I'm like, I can't keep running all over town doing massage. Like, I need to sit and figure this stuff out and land a client like ASAP. So I'm like, I remember my phone sitting there. I'm like, I just got to start cold calling people. And I'm sweating. I'm just staring at my phone. I'm just walking back and forth. I'm like, I don't know who I'm going to call. I don't know what I'm going to say. I thought, okay, Chan, just take one step closer to it. So I get on my laptop and I'm looking at some of the businesses like kind of around me that don't have map listings or aren't showing up. I said, okay, I'm just going to make a list of 10. I'm going to call all 10 of them before I go to sleep tonight. I pick up the phone, call the first one. They don't answer. I'm like, yes, they didn't answer. Yes. I'm like, okay, one down. Go on to the next one. They answer, "Hey, is the boss man in?" That was like my in. "Hey, let me talk to the head honcho." Like, I wasn't like, "Hey, I'm a marketer," or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, kinda old like how my grandpa would talk to
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right? And like, "No, he's not in. Call back later." Okay. Third one, call, "Hey," the boss does answer. "Hey, I got some leads that I wanna send your electrical business. I was wondering if we could meet up." "No, not interested." Click. It's like, "Okay." Fifth one, I call, and it's this limousine company. They do, like, limousine rentals, party buses, chauffeur cars, and I'm like, "Hey, I got a bunch of party bus rentals, and I'm just looking to hand them off to somebody." He's like, "Really? Like how many?" I was like, "Oh, probably like" I'm just making this up, "probably
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 a day." He's like, "Yeah, I'll take them." I was like, "Well, can I come meet you in your office?" He's like, "Absolutely, come by tomorrow." So I go by, and I'm in my old beat up pickup truck, and I pull up, and it's in this kinda shady area in the San Fernando Valley. Like, everyone's got these big, like, crazy fences around their houses, and there's these giant Armenian dudes standing outside, and I'm just like, what am I getting myself into? Like, he runs a limousine company, but I wonder what other
What other he
business he's
does.
in. But I parked my truck down the road because I didn't
Let 'em
want them
see
to
it.
see it. And so I walk up and I ring the doorbell and the gate opens up and I walk in and I'm like, "Hey, I'm here to see Andy." And they're just like the nicest guys ever. Like, "Yeah, man, come on in." And so we sit down and I just start going through it. And I'm showing what all of his competitors are doing and how they're doing it. And like, he doesn't have map listing set up. And I said, "Well, you need a map listing for all of your services and we'll pop these things up all over LA so you can be getting chauffeurs, party buses, but they'll be all over the place because the map listings are all geo targeted. So like if you're searching for a limousine company in, Santa Monica, your spot in Venice isn't going to show up." So I was like, "Well, let's just set all these things up." And he said, "Okay, how much is going to be?" I said, "Well, it's $1,000 per one per month." And so I said, "We should probably start out with five because you have five different services." And he said, "I want to get there, but let's start out with two." I said, "Great. You just want two sites? Great. It'll just be 2 grand." He's like, "Cool, let me go grab my checkbook." And he goes over and grabs his checkbook, writes out for
Boom.
2,000, hands it to me, and I'm shaking. I'm like, I don't know, like imposter syndrome, right? Like I haven't done this yet. I know how to do it. I know I'm gonna be right by this guy, but I don't have any clients. And he asked me, "Do you work with any other limousine companies?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I can't share their information. I keep my clients' stuff personal because. And, so I get out in my truck and I just start bawling. I just start crying in my truck. The check's all wet. And I was like, it's real. Like all of those, because the universe gives us clues. It gives us, if we're open and we're listening, right? And a motto that we have in abundance is be a one mistake learner. So if you get a no, learn from that and then go from that. Or if you fail, like don't keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Or so you're just going to keep living the same life and not getting what you want. So I was like, "Holy smokes, this worked." So I drive home, I'm all excited, get home, and I just show my girlfriend the check. I'm like, "Look at that, $2,000 for about an hour conversation." She's like, "Are you selling drugs?" I was like, "No, why would
Who
no."
writes a check for
She
drugs?
she's like I was like, "Who writes a check for drugs?" And then she's like, "And I know you're doing massage therapy, like, are you doing, like, happy ending massages now? Like, what's going on here, man?" I was like, "No, I started this marketing thing and I didn't wanna tell you because I invested the last of our money." So it was like the whole, like, truth conversation. And she was really mad, and then she was really excited. She's like, "Is this her? Like, what's going on?" I started showing it to her and, like, showing her how many businesses needed this. She's like, "Great, go get some groceries because 'cause we're out of freaking groceries,"
Yeah.
right? So that was, like, the moment where I was like, "Okay, I'm onto something." I see value in it, they see value in it. I knew as a massage therapist that I wanted leads badly. Like, I was willing to pay whatever it took to, get leads coming in and be able to scale it. So, I got home and immediately started building out all of his stuff, and since I had that momentum, I just started freaking calling people the next day. I was like, "Instead of 10, I'm gonna call 20," and it was just, like, hammering it, and then I was, like, doing some research and thinking, like, "Where do business owners hang out?" And I didn't know about chamber of commerce meetings, I didn't know about BMI meetings, and in LA, for every suburb, there's a BMI and a chamber of commerce. So I went through the entire internet of like that whole area, even all the way down to like, San Diego and looked at all of them and literally filled up my whole calendar for the next 60 days. And I was at 2 to 3 networking events every day for like 60 days straight. I said, instead of cold calling, I'll just go and buy them lunch and hang out and gather business cards. And I remember at the end of that first week had like just a huge stack of business cards. And so then it was a different conversation, calling them up, like, "Hey Sean, what's up? We met at that networking event. I just want to, set up some things for you and get your sites really going." End up landing a dentist from the Malibu Chamber of Commerce, an electrician from the LA Chamber of Commerce, and then it just started going. And about after like I think 78 days, I hit 10 grand a month and was just like, I'm all in and just became absolutely obsessed. Stopped drinking, stopped going out, stopped going to auditions, just cut everything out because I don't remember who I was listening to, but like whatever's not getting you closer to your dream, just cut it out. Like there's no gray area here. It's either white and black. You're either working towards it or working away from it. And I thought, okay, every single minute that I'm awake, I'm working on this thing because I'm like, I got to get this thing ramped up.
Still operate that way today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, I've learned lessons and Meltzer says this, a couple times. He's like, millionaires will go bankrupt probably twice in their life because they'll let off the gas. and I'd heard people say it in other contexts where I thought, "I don't wanna be in that situation." And so, yeah, I just kept building it, ended up hiring a really awesome sales guy I went to the first biohacking convention with Dave Asprey, and there's all these, like, high vibe people. So I got into biohacking, which gave me more energy and, really started taking care of myself because I was like, "Man, I need the energy to really build this thing," and started building a team, and that just kept growing and growing and growing, and then a couple years later, people were saying, "Well, how did you grow that thing so fast?" And, I started niching down and only working with, like, high-end clients. I was only working with attorneys and cosmetic dentists, plastic surgeons, because yeah, for them to cut a check for 5 grand a month was like a drop in the bucket for them. And back then, we are selling cost per case acquisition. So for every case I brought a personal injury attorney, he'd pay me 3 grand instead of paying per lead or like a flat retainer. So we were able to scale up and get clients that are paying us like, 12, 15, 20 grand a month. I thought, okay, now we're really cruising. And yeah, I just kept going from there, and then, yeah, people were asking me how I scaled my agency so quickly, so I was coaching a lot of people just, like, because I loved it, I was obsessed, and that's what's so important with entrepreneurship, like, you gotta get obsessed, like, you gotta be passionate about what you're doing or else you're gonna run out of steam. So anything I could learn about marketing, and at the time, Gary Vee was, like, really coming up, which is cool that I'm out here, gonna see him this weekend. He was super inspiring, and I saw these people just really taking it to the next level, and I thought, I want that to be me, and just kept surrounding myself with the right people that were rowing in the same direction. Lost a lot of friends along the way because they just weren't, we weren't having the same conversations, and I just, nothing like there's nothing wrong with that. It was just like I got to make room for the people that I want in my life to help get me to that next level physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, relationship wise.
So now you have a ton of stuff going on in your life. You play golf. I want to hear your answer to this. Um, Usually around probably hole six. So yesterday it was around hole six. I played with some guys I didn't know. They say, "So Chance, so what do you do today with what you have grown this into? No longer just rank and rent. What do you? What's your answer to that? What do you do?"
I teach skills of the digital age and I help people take their first abundant leap. So that was a couple years later, we created MM and we started teaching people how to run agencies and we built software so that they could generate leads better on Google. Eventually we created like a drag and drop, SaaS product that we use now. And we just started growing that. Now we have 8,000 students in that one program. And I thought, man, like where was this when I was really getting started?
Because you had to teach yourself,
Yeah.
basically.
I took a little bit from here, a little bit from there. My business partner today, Abdul, was a great mentor to me and still is, and we've been partners ever since. And I was like, man, not everybody wants to run an agency, so let's find these other low barrier to entry business models where we can help teach people if they want to be in real estate or e-com or so we started, once you get in that space, like we started going to events and meeting people that are doing really cool things, but never even thought about a course or a coaching business or an educational platform. So, we partnered with a good friend of ours, Tom, and scaled up his Amazon business. So now he's got about 8,000 students in that. And we call it platform arbitrage. So if you want to start a business, first time entrepreneur, like don't go start something from scratch. You don't understand marketing, you don't understand sales, you don't understand product market fit, you don't understand production, shipping. I mean, there's so many variables as you know. So like if you build a business on Airbnb, it's like the buyers and sellers are already there. Right? And so there's massive opportunity. You don't have to figure all that out. Go find where the money's already going and just like get in the middle of it. So we're teaching people essentially how to have rental arbitrage, e-com arbitrage, like just be the middleman or middlewoman of the deal and you make great money. That's exactly what I was doing online. I knew people were searching for businesses. I knew businesses wanted customers. I'm just going to help, connect them. So we applied that mentality to now Kendall and a 0% down real estate acquisition model. We're working on like some trading bots and some trading courses, and it just kept scaling to now what Abundance is today, where we have 150 employees and a big office in Vancouver, and have now had the privilege of coaching about 25,000 students on the platform.
I love that. We were just, I don't know when this is going to air, James. We just had a recent guest that built a $1 billion business in real estate, just being the middleman. So all that he did was that he knew the people that had the inventory and he knew the buyers, and he says, and he never had to leverage debt. Said so, the buyers were leveraging debt, and he just knew he just connected the people. And so very much yours is actually easier because you're talking about platforms that exist and just jumping in the middle and making those connections, plugging the outlet into, plugging the plug into the outlet and, producing magic. Um, the company abundance.io, that's where people can find you. This common theme though, so you explained this idea of, the digital first step. Um, what about this abundance part? Why is that so important? How often is the mindset an obstacle to being able to pull this off? It sounds great. Like, yeah, just Airbnb, jump right in the middle. I'll have tons of money. Why not call it platform arbitrage? Why is abundance so important to you?
It's a great question. I knew that because I'd worked on my mindset a lot before I really started that first business. I was a lot into personal growth, meditation, breath work. Like I was already really working on myself because especially I saw my dad once he had mental illness and pass. I was like, man, I don't want that to happen to me or anybody else that I love because it was really painful to watch him go through it. It was obviously really painful for us as children to experience that. And I was like, I don't want my mind to ever be sick. And so I became obsessed with mental health, personal development. And because I knew at some point, if I was looking through the right lenses, when I saw the right opportunity, I would know how to take advantage of that situation, you know? Um, so abundance, like in order to have abundance, because then at one point I had a lot of money and then my relationship abundance wasn't there, or like it was always kind of out of whack, right? Or I wasn't taking as good a care of myself as I should and was really focused on the finances. So it was always kind of this juggling act. And I thought, well, if you can create abundance in all three of those areas, health, relationships, and finance, then that's really when you can live an abundant life. And so that's like the core training with abundance is, you know, right when you enter in, you like go through an actual entrepreneurial quiz to figure out what your archetype is. Are you a socializer, a coach, a founder, or an engineer? And then based on those strengths and weaknesses, then you can really find like the right business model for you. Well, at that point, you speak with an advisor. We hired like 30 therapists through COVID that lost their jobs. And so you speak with therapists on our team that we've taught like personal development. So, like, you're speaking with people that really understand the mind and help people create that abundantly. Because when you go from working as a W 2, becoming a business owner, it's a completely different thing. Like, no one's there to tell you what to do. Like, you are in power. That's why you're able to hit those numbers and have that life because you're willing to take on the responsibility to really grow something. You don't have a cap to your income anymore, but people got to go through that process to really understand it. So at the beginning of any of those businesses, it's all mindset and accountability, time management, protect your brain power. Like, people talk about money and time being your most valuable resource, but in the book Deep Work, he talks about your brain power is the most valuable resource. It's like, yeah, sure, you got 12 hours in a day, but like after you eat lunch, like you ain't performing as well as you did between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. And I remember my stepdad said, you'll make all your millions of dollars before 10 a.m. And I didn't really know what he meant by that until I started protecting that time. Because even when you start a business and you still have all these other distractions, it's like once I learned to turn off all my notifications, turn everything off, that's when business really started to grow because I was protecting my brain power. So that's a big thing that we talk about in abundance because when that is the most abundant thing that you have, because it's going to allow you to figure out tough situations. It's going to allow you to figure out the issues that you're having in your health, in your relationships, with your family to like really become a better human because they talk about like even in corporate America, it's like the, the owner's probably making only one difficult decision a week. You got middle management that's making one or two difficult decisions a day. And then you got the employees that are making a lot of really tiny decisions all day long. Right. So the brain can only make very few difficult decisions in a day or a week. So you got to be protecting your mind to be able to handle that.
What does that entail? Just between in the early mornings, are you on some sort of a win the day morning routine? Or does that mean silence? What does that mean protecting your brain?
So I'll get up at 5:30 or 6, kinda depends on when my son gets up, but I get up, meditate, I meditate in my sauna for 20 minutes, get out, do my breath work, cold plunge, spend some time with my son, and then right to work. And then, by 8, I'm usually sitting down or standing at my stand desk, and from 8 to noon is just like produce, 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 whatever that entails for that day. If it's creating new content, if it's coaching up my leaders, whatever it is, it's like up until that point, I'm not looking at emails. I'm not, my family knows that, that's my time that I need to be my best self so that I can take care of my family. And then after that, it's like, yeah, more phone calls and, JV partnerships and things of that nature. That's a little more, I don't need my full brain power to do that.
Kind of ramp it up, tail it off.
Yep.
One of the things Lacey and I talk a lot about is this concept of everybody loves morning routines, but most people don't have. So I'm interested if in the backside of this, most people don't have a midday. They don't have a halftime adjustment. Sometimes I would imagine in that initial 4 hours, by the end of that, very little has gone into plan. You're like, oh, I thought it was going to take this amount of time, or I had a fire that I had to put out. Even it could be just on personal. Maybe your son comes in and you're interrupted, or your son's crying because he fell, and most people have the tendency to allow that to just totally wreck the whole rest of the day. um, I think in sports, especially in team sports, halftime adjustments are critical. Oftentimes games are won in the fourth quarter,
Yep.
right? What is your take on that? How does that play out in your life, if at all?
Yeah. So I started meditating like 6, 7 years ago. So 20 minutes in the morning and then 20 minutes in the afternoon. So around 1:30, I'll meditate. And it's kind of like my reset. I'll go lay in the sun. I'll go to the beach if we're at our spot in Laguna. I'll get my feet in the sand. If we're in Idaho, I'll jump in the lake. I go get in water or break away from it again and get some grounding in. Take a walk, say a gratitude prayer, something along to kind of reset if I am going to push for a longer day or get my workout in. So that's kind of my midday. And then from, 2 to 4, I really kind of finish out my day, and then, 4 to 9 is family time.
Wind down. How can people get a hold of you if they want more chance in their life?
More chance and more abundance. Well, my Instagram is chance_Welton. There's a lot of fake ones out there, a lot, that are trying to scam people. So watch out for that.
You're not selling crypto on Instagram?
Nope. Did I
Okay.
did my other alter
No, but
ego
that's
message
usually
you? No,
the scam,
that's what
right?
it is. Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Have you thought about crypto investing?
Yeah.
So I don't direct message you first, just so you guys know. And then abundance.io. So you can go there, you can take the quiz, you figure out what your archetype is. Um, and then from there, it's like, yeah, you can kind of start to see some of the different business models. Right now, we have 5 partners. By the end of this year, we'll have 10. So we're looking at, other, people that are listening in that have a great concept that they've made great money doing it. It's a low barrier to entry, like thinking outside of the box type of business model. Definitely contact me because we're always looking for partners to help them grow. Because a lot of our partners were, yeah, making, multiple 6 or 7 figures and never even thought about being a coach. And it's really cool to see somebody go from, entrepreneur to leader to like impact and thought leader, right? And then to see them have transformation, then also help so many others transform. Like a couple of my good buddies that run the Airbnb, it's just been really cool to watch them develop. And now they're like just powerhouse dudes. So
Well, if you're a part of any of our communities, from Black Diamond Club, Book Yourself Solid, any of the stuff that we are doing, I'm sure that you will see more of Chance around in the upcoming weeks and months ahead. I look forward to spending some time with you this weekend. We're going to
absolutely.
be at several functions together in relation to VCon, and I hope that you guys will look forward to seeing Chance around the None of Your Business podcast, Black Diamond Club community, Book Yourself Solid community here in the near future. Chance, thanks for dropping in. Special guest holding down Lacey's spot today. We
I
really
love it.
appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great to be here. And I have my podcast as well. So when you get out on the West Coast, we'd love to have you on the Abundance podcast as well.
Absolutely. Chance is all things abundance. And I know so many of you really struggle with this. It's a known thing. Like you sit and think, like I really struggle with abundance. And like I was saying, Lacey has done so much work on this, and watching her journey. I know that there are moments when she knew, even today, where she'll say, I know that this is an old mindset creeping in. So I want to encourage everybody to connect with Chance. There's nobody who can who would not be able to use more abundance in your life. One last thing, Chance. I always talk to people in philosophical conversations. We talk about like a universal intelligence or on the spiritual side, and I always say, David Meltzer says, there's a power greater than you, who loves you more than your mom loves you. And I always ask people, like, so when you hear that concept, do you have an idea of what it is? And people are like, yeah. And I said, well, see, it's not that. Whatever you thought it is, it's not that. And I think abundance is the same way. It's an ongoing process. Like whenever we say abundance, everybody on the other side of the camera or listening to the podcast, you have an idea of what you think it is, but it's not that. It's actually more than that, right?
Mm.
Like, can you explain that? Like with maybe when we say abundance, somebody just thinks financially, but it's more than that. And you mentioned health and relationships, and I would say, yeah, but it's more than that. Like it's just abundance in everything. It's every single cell. It's every single organism on the planet can live in a state of abundance, and it's really incomprehensible to our limited, educated minds, right? And when you get a taste of it, as you have, it begins to open and expand your mind because you're like, "Wow, this is out there. How do I tap into that more?" Well, we're here to tell you today that Chance is a great resource and tool for you to tap into that and explore what really is possible, opening up your minds, opening up your heart to be open to receiving the truly unexpected, greater than your wildest dreams. But I got to tell you, I say this every podcast too. I've never seen anybody become abundant listening to a podcast. You've got to do stuff. So you're going to have to get your phones out. You're going to have to go to abundance.io. You're going to have to send Chance a direct message. You're going to have to take a chance on Chance. You're going to have to say, "Hey, what about me? Can you help me?" Because just listening to a podcast is great and we appreciate you being with us, but that's not enough to move the needle. You got to move to Maui if you want
Yeah.
to make the breakthrough, right? You got to
Yeah.
do something crazy.
It's right. Because also, like I was talking about Sam with this a little while ago, but getting in those extreme situations really shows you who you are as a human. And that's why I love extreme sports so much. Because like when you're jumping out of an airplane or dropping out on a wave, it's like you are in the now. It's like, can I handle this? And I've learned so much about myself, and uh, I go after business the same way, where I love just putting myself in those situations to see like how I'm gonna handle it, because it just makes me better as a person. Because that's what I love so much about the game of entrepreneurship. I really think it is a game. Like you're always getting better. You're always getting better with strategy. You're always improving it. You look at pro athletes, they're always working on their craft. In golf, like we both love golf. It's like Tiger Woods would spend freaking 8 hours a day putting when everybody just wants to be out playing, just like hitting on the driving range and hitting the long ball. It's like, no, you got to break down every piece of your game and work on it. Same thing with entrepreneurship, especially when you're getting started and you're a one man shop or a one woman show. You got to get good at sales. You got to get good at marketing. You got to get good at hiring. You got to get good at legal. You got to get good at all of these things, accounting. Like it's not the fun stuff, but like you got to work on those aspects so that you can take it to the next level. So also when we talk about abundance, it's like it's not our fault that we're not thinking in an abundant way. And what I mean by that is growing up in our educational system, we're spoon-fed poverty mentality,
Absolutely.
where money doesn't grow on trees. Money's hard. There's not enough time in the day. In order to get X, Y, Z, you got to go to school for 12 years and be in all this debt. And then people are like, oh, if you make 100 grand a year, you've made it. And it's like, you can't retire on that. You can barely even get by on 100 grand.
Well, I'll give you one more. Myron Golden taught me. They teach you Johnny had 5 candies. He gave Chance 2 candies. How many candies does Johnny have? And the answer is, well, where'd Johnny get the 5 candies?
Right.
Johnny can get as many candies as he wants. So why are we playing the zero sum game? Right. And so even that teaching us math concepts disconnects us from abundance, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's not a zero sum game.
Absolutely. Powerful.
I want to encourage everybody once again, abundance.io, Chance Welton. Thank you so much for hanging in with us. I'm going to have James put a little trailer, a little James voice of God message in here for those of you that don't listen on 1.5 or 2x speed. This will be a 1.5 or 2xer so you can get your full cardio in. We always say it. I don't know how we top this one, but we'll try again next week. Bring on a new guest, or maybe it'll just be Lacey and I. You'll have to wait and see. Next week, don't miss the next edition of the None of Your Business podcast.